Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of the SBH Investment Summit. I'm Alexis Can, and I'm very excited to be your host for today's in-depth discussion on the U.S. small cap growth landscape. Today, we'll be discussing the underlying themes and trends that are shaping today's ever-changing market. We'll discuss potential challenges ahead as well as opportunities. And lastly, we'll discuss how our team at SBH is positioning our portfolios to achieve success for our clients. To help us navigate through these different topics, I'm excited to introduce Brian Fitzsimons, Director of Small Cap Growth Strategies at SBH. He invests exclusively in small cap growth companies and has been doing it for almost 20 years. So, Brian, I want to thank you for being part of this discussion and sharing your expertise with us for the next few minutes. And without further ado, let's get into our first question. So, Brian, let's start with how you're navigating the ongoing volatility in the technology sector. And with that, what role do you believe AI plays in shaping its future going forward?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Lexi. Appreciate you taking the time to talk about small cap growth and some of the exciting things going on in the market. When it comes to AI, it's been a bright spot in what's otherwise been a particularly weak backdrop for most small cap tech sector stocks. Enterprise IT budgets have been facing intense scrutiny. And additionally, supply chain distortions from building up significant inventories post-pandemic are now running into a weak demand environment. So short-term headwinds have been a driver for increased interest for us in the sector, given our long-term investment approach. We believe that good products and services are not permanently impaired despite the near-term headwinds. We've been underweight the space for a while on fundamental concerns, but have been looking to increase exposure given incremental improvement in valuations and fundamental opportunities in the space that we see emerging. Our exposure to semiconductors has been particularly helpful in 2023, given AI-related long-term benefits, and we're starting to see a recovery in certain IT service companies as well. As a portfolio as a whole, we don't want to bet against the long-term success of AI, as we believe it will be a force in the market, driving efficiency, creating some real disruption. But we definitely need to be selective in the process.
So another challenge for the technology sector has no doubt been the rate hiking campaign by the Fed. The Fed has raised rates by more than 5 percentage points since March of last year, bringing them to their highest levels in 22 years in a very short amount of time. So how has this impacted various sectors in the market, particularly technology, as well as the financial sector?
Yeah, 2022 was a year of interest rate moves that really impacted valuation for growth stocks. We believe that we're mainly through the brunt of this impact, and now the rate questions really relate more to the longer term impacts to companies that need capital to either grow or have capital refinancing needs with existing balance sheet situations. When it comes to tech and financial, specifically for tech, most companies are typically asset light and don't require a significant amount of growth capital. And so if we do see an economic slowdown followed by some rate relief, tech should be an area of outperformance given that valuation benefit around rates. When it comes to the financial sector, there's a lot going on there. I think we're ahead of a potentially meaningful slowdown in loan activity on both the commercial and personal category side, given higher rates. It's also impacting larger consumer purchases that require financing. When you look at regional banks, as we go through this digestion phase, if this is the new normal, we believe regional banks in aggregate are facing a fair number of pressures on multiple fronts, including slowing growth, higher deposit costs and funding costs overall, and now emerging credit concerns. So there's a lot going on in the financial sectors for sure around interest rates.
So with those concerns you just mentioned around future growth, and as well as both the future growth in the U.S. and globally, how are these different factors informing your decisions around the positioning of the strategy to be able to withstand these different headwinds? And lastly, are you still finding attractive opportunities within the small cap growth space?
Yeah, we absolutely continue to find attractive opportunities in really in multiple sectors, especially given some of the recent volatility and pullbacks in the market. Dislocations around things like AI, the recent introduction of the discussions around GLP-1 medications, and a lot of other ongoing innovations. It's when it comes specifically to small cap growth, we're focused on finding investment opportunities in what we call fundamentally stable growth companies, meaning their ability to generate more consistent growth in cash flow per share over time. And we believe this approach provides support in periods like you're referencing here around recessions and macro uncertainty, given the greater exposure to really idiosyncratic investment opportunities within companies and the company-specific drivers that aren't just tied to the overall economic growth. So we're trying to find companies that we think can sustain over a full market cycle.
Great. Well, that was our last question for today, Brian. So, as we wrap up today's summit, I want to say thank you to Brian for sharing your insights and perspectives. I hope that the information we've shared today will provide our listeners with a deeper understanding of the current state of the small cap growth market. But if you have any further questions or are interested in learning more about any of the topics we've covered today, we'd love to continue the conversation with you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your relationship contact at SBH, and we look forward to having you join us at our next summit. Until then, thank you for your time and for being part of today's discussion.